Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the TradeStation Masterclass. It's great to have you all here. Today is Tuesday, August 26th. For those that are new to the Masterclass series, my name is Jesus Nava. I'm the Director of Client Training and Education for TradeStation Securities. Always a pleasure to talk about TradeStation and some of its technology. Especially today, we're going to talk about EasyLanguage and how to program indicators to do what you want them to do. Specifically in the area of colors and style, there's a lot you can do to indicators to make them a little bit more enhanced when it comes to the visual aspects of it. Okay, before we get started, the usual disclosures, just keep in mind that every symbol and idea that we talk about is for educational purposes only. These are not recommendations of TradeStation. Also, active trading is not suitable for everyone. It should be done with a risk capital. And if anybody needs additional information on risk disclosures, go to tradestation.com/important-information and you'll find all the links in there, okay? So as I said previously, we're going to talk a little bit about EasyLanguage. And before I do, let me go ahead and talk to you a little bit about Masterclass. We are doing an in-person Masterclass event. Let me bring it up here on the screen. So this is Masterclass Derivatives in Focus. So it is an event that is going to have a big focus on options, futures, and futures options. So we have a whole series of presentations lined up for this day, which is September 24th, and it's going to be an in-person event in Chicago, Illinois. So if you're interested, please go to this link. Let me go ahead and copy this link and put it right here for everyone. This is in-person Masterclass, Chicago, for September 24th. Okay. All right. If everybody finds the chat, you'll find the link that takes you to information about the in-person masterclass. If you scroll down, it'll go into details about what it will cover. You'll have a lineup of speakers. As you can see, we have great professional traders that are educators as well that are going to share their insights with the audience. So if you're interested, please visit the link and register for the event. I am going to share this special promo code right here in the chat. Let me just type it for everyone here. Right, the code is options100, and you can use that code and it'll give you a $100 discount towards the registration. Okay, perfect. All right, that's one of the announcements that I wanted to make. So let me close this out. If you're able to make it, it'd be great to meet you in person. I'm going to be there also doing a presentation. So let's talk about smart styling, coloring, and styling. As I said at the beginning, smart styling just enhances the visual aspect of a study. So EasyLanguage allows you to dynamically change the style of a study based on conditional rules and criteria to better convey the idea that the study is trying to show you. So whether it is a crossover or a signal that you're trying to get from those technical indicators, this smart styling will make things a lot more fun to interpret. Not only fun, but also easier to interpret because you're enhancing the visual aspect of it. So we're going to talk about some of the reserved words they're going to be using in EasyLanguage, and we're going to try to use a few examples right here on the spot so that we can modify some studies. The reserved words we're going to talk through today are set plot color, set plot width, set plot BG color. BG stands for background. Color names, we're going to talk through some of the colors that you can use, the RGB function, gradient color, and my color. So those are all the different things that we're going to try to use today. And we're going to do that in a more practical way by changing the code of a built-in indicator and see how that works. So let's go ahead and talk about our first example, set plot color. So the example code is this one. If MACD crosses above 0, I'm just reading down here below. If MACD crosses above 0, then we change the color of our plot. If it crosses below 0, then we have a different color. It's a very straightforward example. You're just going to change the color of the line, whether that line is crossing over or crossing below. We can apply this concept to any study that we have in TradeStation. So let's go ahead and go over to our platform and set the stage so that we can change the color of our study. So I'm going to go to the TradeStation platform. I'm going to do something very simple. So let me go here and go to studies, add study, and we're going to add just a simple moving average one line. There it is. Everybody sees the line. It goes right on the screen. Now, I'm going to edit the easy language of this study. So let me right click on this study, and I'm going to click on edit easy language for moving average one line. And the idea here is for me to modify this indicator so that it changes color depending on the crossover. Now, if the bars are above, we'll change the color of the line. If the bars are below, we'll change the color of the line to something different. Very easy to do. So what I'm going to do with this default indicator is I'm going to rename it to something different so that I don't change the original code. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm just going to add the prefix at MC at the very beginning. That's for the Masterclass series. And I'm just going to add the name or the word colors at the very end so that I know that this is the example that applies different colors. I'm going to click OK to this. And I'm going to start doing some cleanup because a lot of times some of the built-in indicators in TradeStation, they start using some more related functionality in easy language that makes the code so much more longer. I try to keep my code as simple as I can so that I have a full view of the code and I have a full understanding of what the code is trying to do. In this case, I'm going to remove that first line because that's just an annotation. I'm going to leave the inputs. In this indicator, I have 3 inputs: price, length, and displays. This information that's here that says display name equal, this is a tooltip, easy language syntax that allows you to hover over the inputs in the front end. When you're editing an indicator, you have the ability to hover over inputs, and it gives you a tooltip with information on how or what type of information that input is requiring. I don't need that for this indicator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that whole section between square brackets and I'm going to delete it. That from the get-go, it starts simplifying the code so much more. So now you can see the 3 clear inputs. I'm going to put those inputs into one single line. And there we go. See how we just cleaned it up a little bit? So we got the variables, we got the variable declaration and the variable assignment. We have a displace and a current bar, and then begin. We don't actually need that either. So let me go ahead and remove that and just leave the plot statement. For the alert criteria, let's remove that. This is just for the simplification. So I'm going to leave this. I don't need the alert either. So let's remove this whole section. So I just need the plot statement, and let's just remove the copyright as well. Okay. So all I need is the variable declaration, variable assignment, and then the plot. I don't need this word either because I removed all the references to this place. So this is going to plot whatever calculation is stored in AVG, and this is my label. Let me remove that question mark. The question mark here is for language translation. We don't need it at the moment. So let me verify this. Oh, right here, I have an extra square bracket. Sometimes when I clean indicators up, I just leave things that I don't need anymore. And here is pointing to that parentheses. Okay, let me see what's wrong with that. Plotting average, AVG, and it says plot name expected here. It's because I need to remove these parentheses because that name does not go inside parentheses. It goes inside parentheses if you have the exclamation mark at the beginning. But if you're not going to be translating your code or using it in different languages, maybe that exclamation mark means nothing to you. So let's just go ahead and remove it and remove the parentheses around the name. And now I can just verify this. There we go. So now we have a few lines of code that are going to do exactly the same. Let me go ahead and go back to my chart. All right, I'm going to remove the indicator that I added, and I'm going to look for the one that I just created. I'm going to go to Studies, Add Study. Okay, and I'm going to look for Add MC, and this is a moving average, one line colors. This is the one that I just renamed, remember? I added the prefix, and I added the colors word at the very end. Okay, there we go. So it does exactly the same thing. It just doesn't have all that extra code that I'm not going to use. Maybe somebody does use translation services. Maybe somebody does use the tooltips, but for now, let's just simplify the code. So what I'm going to do here on my code is the following, okay? And I'm going to say if the close is greater than AVG, AVG is the parameter that we're using here on the top. Then we're going to do the set plot color. Make sure that when you type in these reserved words, they come up in blue. There are no spaces in between, set plot color, but they need to come up in blue so that you type them correctly so that EasyLanguage recognizes them and know exactly what they mean. Set plot color needs two variables. First of all, the plot number that we are trying to apply the color to. In this case, that's plot number 1. How do we know that? Because that's the only plot we have in this indicator. So on that line, I want to use the color magenta. All right. And I'm going to do the other side. If the close is less than the average, then we do the same. Set plot color of plot number 1, and we'll do cyan. All right, let's verify this. By the way, if you guys have any questions, let me know right here in the chat, and I'll be glad to provide answers. Okay, so let's verify this. And now that I've added this simple line of code, when I go back to my TradeStation, take a look. Now, my indicator is giving me some additional information. Not only is a cyan line, now it's a line that changes color based on that condition, whether it is above the close or below the close, or the close being above the line or below the line. That's the condition that we put in, and you can see how the line is shifting color depending on that condition. Let's go back here to the PowerPoint and take a look at some other syntaxes that we can take a look at. The width of any line can also be changed dynamically. Here's the example code. So here we have, if the close crosses above the average, or close crosses below average, then set plot width 1, 4. The parameters that are needed on the width side are, first of all, which line, as we did it in the color, which line is it the one that you're trying to change the width to? And then what is the thickness? Here the number 4 equals the thickness. The thickness ranges from 0 all the way to 6. How do I know that? I'm going to show you where we get that information. Let me go back here to my TradeStation. If I double click on the line here and I go to the style, you're going to see that in style on their weight, there are 7 different thicknesses that you can set your line to. Mine is set to the second one. So this ranges from 0, which is the thinnest, to 6, which is the thickest. Mine is set to 2, but I did it as a default on this indicator. It's not done programmatically. So you can set it by default, but you can also change the thickness programmatically. And that's what we're going to do to this indicator. Let me go back here to my code, and I'm going to add the word begin here, because not only we're going to be changing the color, we're going to also set the width. So here I'm just going to add another line, and I'm going to say set plot width. Make sure that comes up in blue. If it doesn't come up in blue, it's because it's misspelled. So make sure that you check the spelling, okay? This is from plot number 1, and I'm going to make this, let's make it a 4, and then we need an end right here. So if we added a begin, then we did an end. And we're going to do the same thing for the other side. We're going to do begin, and over here, we're going to do set plot width, no spaces, plot number 1, and this will be a 2. And then we're just going to end this other block. Let me make them a little bit more different. I'm just going to choose a 5 here. See how different that looks. I'm going to click on, that's going to be really thick. So as soon as we type in the code and we verify, just remember that you have to verify every time that you change the code. If I go back here to TradeStation, you can already see the difference between the thicknesses. Now you can see that whenever the bars are above, I see a thicker magenta line. When it switches to the bars being below, then my cyan line kicks in and we switch the thickness to a thinner line. Pretty cool, huh? Now let's go back here to my PowerPoint and talk about, so yes, the thickness ranges from 0, which is the thinnest, to 6, which is the thickest. Now let's talk about background color, because that's something really cool that you can use on any RadarScreen indicator. And I say RadarScreen because it only applies to RadarScreen. I wish you could change the background of the chart based on a condition. It would be very cool if you had a whole dashboard filled with different charts, and all of a sudden, if one is generating an alert, it just flashes a different color. It just gets your attention. Pretty cool, right? But in this case, the BG, which is the background, applies to the background inside of a RadarScreen cell, which is also very impressive too, that you can change the color inside that cell, and it just enhances the visual of your study. Let's take a look at an example. Here it is. We go back to the MACD example that says if MACD crosses above 0, then set plot BG color to, then you have the plot number that you're trying to apply the color to, and then the color that you want to use. In this case is using dark green and dark red. We're going to take a look at also where you can find the list of colors that you can use in just a bit. So let me go over here to my TradeStation and let me put a radar screen here on the right-hand side. All right, I've been having issues with this computer, so hopefully it won't lock up on us. Sometimes it just freezes and I have to force it to shut down. I'm getting a new laptop. This one that I'm using is about 5 years old, and I think it's reached its usable life. So here we're going to add a list of symbols. I'm going to add maybe, yeah, the Dow Industrial. There we go. And I'm going to add the same indicator that I modified here so we can take a look. I'm going to go to Studies, Add Studies. It's taking a little longer to load. There we go. I go to the at MC, moving average, one line colors, and I'm going to add it. Let's put it right here. And that gets added right there. Since we already added some color conditioning, it transfers that into my study, into my column. So whenever I see a cyan number, I know that the closing prices are above. I'm sorry. Yeah, the closing price is not above, they're below. I may have switched the colors a little bit, but yes, if I see the colors magenta, I know that the closing prices are above. That's just an indication, a visual enhancement to my radar screen indicator. Otherwise, I would just see white numbers, which doesn't really tell me if it's above or below. This helps a lot when you use the custom study. Let me go back to another custom study. Let me go here to Studies, Add Study. When you use the moving average, the one that comes built into TradeStation, moving average one line, I'm just going to add it. There we go. This is what it looks like. Remember, look at the numbers. They're exactly the same. They're exactly, both indicators are calculating the same formula, but one gives you more information. One tells you if the bars are above or below. This one doesn't tell you that. So that's the idea, for you to enhance the visual. Now you can enhance this further by changing the background. Let's go ahead and change that. So instead of, let me go back here to my code, changing the color of the font, we can change the color of the background, or you can change both if you want to. So for example, on the magenta side, I can say set plot BG color. On plot number 1, we're going to do dark blue. And for this other one, we're going to say set plot BG color. For plot number 1, we're going to make this dark red. Actually, this is dark blue because it's cyan, and I wanted to keep the cyan. The magenta, we're going to make it dark red and see what type of color combination we get. All right, so let's go ahead and verify this. For the other set plot width, since we're in RadarScreen, it will just ignore that because it only applies to the thickness of a line in charting. So yes, we can use the same code, but it just, for a RadarScreen study, it's just going to skip that line because it doesn't apply. Let me verify this. Okay, I already verified it. So let me go back here to my RadarScreen, and this is what it looks like. Now we still see the font in cyan and magenta, but we've added an additional color to the background based on that concept. And you can see that it lines up very nicely. All the magentas have a red background, and all the cyans have a dark blue background. Now, regarding colors, where do you find which colors can you use? Because you saw me type in dark red, dark blue, maybe things that you don't know you could use as colors. Here inside of the development environment, once you're here fixing your code, just go to help and click on TradeStation Development Environment Help. When you go there, you can search right here on the top right, and you can search for the word color, and the top topics usually give you information about color. The EasyLanguage colors is the very first topic. If I click on it, notice that it gives you the reserved word for these 16 colors. These are 16 colors that you can type in directly into your code, and EasyLanguage, we know exactly what they are. We've used cyan, we've used magenta, dark blue, and dark red, but you can use any of these. You can use them by name, or you can use them by number, which is pretty cool. I can say the dark blue is 9 and the dark red is 13. So I can say 9 here and 13 here. Verify this. And then if I go back to my TradeStation, oh, it didn't take it. Okay, maybe it wasn't that easy. Let me go back here to my EasyLanguage legacy color. Maybe I need something different. This is the RGB value. So maybe it's not a straight number that I can use inside of it. I thought I could just type in the number and get the color. But I guess the name would be easier to remember than a specific number for a color. So let's go back and change the code here to where it was. So let's go here, dark red, dark blue. If you wanted to use other words, let me go back here to my PowerPoint because I think I go over it here in the PowerPoint. So referencing colors in EasyLanguage. So we have the legacy RGB colors. These are the ones that I just showed you, the white, black, red, green, blue, cyan, magenta. You got access to the 16 million colors using the RGB reserved word, RGB, and then you supply the 3 numbers. Let me show you where those numbers are. But in addition to that, you also can use names of certain colors with the function myColors. So notice that there's a color called Firebrick that you have to specify it as a name inside quotations inside the function myColors. So different ways in which you can access all the different colors in the palette. How do we get to 16 million? If you multiply 255 times 255, you get 16 million different variations of colors. Let me go back here to the help environment, because in the search results that we were looking at, if you click on color class, which is the second help topic, and I scroll down here, this is where you get color names. You get all these color names with their RGB color combination. RGB stands for red, green, and blue. So you have a number for each one of those colors, which creates that custom color. Or you can use the actual name. Here we have a color called chocolate, and we have a color called beige. By the way, the ones that stand out because they're bolded, those are the legacy colors that you can just type in the word and EasyLanguage will understand them. But if it's something different, like chocolate and beige, they have to use the myColors function. Let's go back here to my code and show you what I mean by that. So here, if you wanted to use something different, for example, instead of dark red, let me choose a dark color here. So let me go back here to my development environment. And I have a color called brown. Let's go with something dark red. Let's use this Firebrick. Firebrick. And for the blue, we'll use midnight blue. Okay? Firebrick and midnight blue. What we need to do here is go back to our code. And for the color, we're going to use my color. Is it my color? myColors. Yes. With an S. My color. Okay, there we go. Notice that I typed in my color and it didn't turn magenta or purple. So I said, what's wrong? It's not bringing in the function. So it needed the S in plural form for it to be recognized as a function. As soon as I typed in the S, it turned magenta. And that was my indication that, yes, I understand what myColors is. So if you see something not turning color blue or magenta, it's because there is something wrong. Something's not spelled right. So I'm going to type in for the red, fire brick. That's the name of the color, right? All right, myColors Firebrick. And for this dark blue, we're going to say myColors again. And the name was midnight blue. Notice that the name goes inside quotations so that myColors know what color to reference. Let me verify this. Okay, study not verified. Maybe I did something wrong here. Okay, I am missing a parenthesis here. Yep, because I open up parentheses, I open up another one, and I need 2 at the very end. Let me verify this one more time. Okay, so now verification is successful. And if I go back here to my platform, see the colors have changed. Now it's not using the dark red, it's using the fire brick, and is using midnight blue. So yes, from here, from the help pages, you can get the list of colors if you wanted to look at something different. You can also use the RGB function. Let me go back here to my PowerPoint, because you can use RGB and the color combination. It's a little bit more difficult to remember what is the RGB number combination for the colors that are there. Sometimes it's easier just to reference them by name. Let's see. William is asking, is there EasyLanguage code that can let you use different color palettes based on where the study's displayed? For example, use a white font if the study is used in RadarScreen, but magenta and cyan for a chart. You don't you actually don't have to switch the color palette. What you need to do is identify the application where the study is being used. There are studies that have syntax for RadarScreen and then have syntax for chart. Back here to my, for example, let me open up a code here, and I believe that has different syntax based on where it's displayed. So let's see. I think ADX is one of those indicators. Let's go ahead and take a look. I got so many different ADX ADX indicators here that I'm not sure which one is the original one. Let's go ahead and open it up. Oh, this one has a password. All right. Okay, so let me go here to the dictionary and chart. Let's go. Okay, so let's see. I have to, because I know that if I search for chart, what is it that I'm looking for? Sometimes it's just a matter of knowing exactly what you need, right? Let's see. All right. If anybody here knows the answer, you can share it right here in the chat. I'm trying to look for a reserved or a function that lets us identify which application we're in. Apps. That was the word apps, but maybe not. I'm going to have to look into that. William, if you can send me an email at education@tradestation.com and make sure that I can find the answer for you. That's the email address right there. But yeah, the idea here would be just to know which application you're on, and there is a way for EasyLanguage to know. And that way you can define colors based on the application where your study is being used. Okay, so let's go back here to, so you can use the RGB function as well. So technically here, I can, instead of my colors, I can just type in RGB. Notice that RGB is not a function, it just turns blue, which means that it's a reserved word. RGB, there we go. And what you would do is just provide the three numbers separated by commas. As simple as that. So if I wanted to use this orange, that's 255, 165, 0. So 255, 165, 0. And if I wanted to use something different for my other study, let's use this sky blue. 135, 206, 235, 135, 65. Is it 65? Then I think I messed up. 135. Let's see. I was doing the sky blue. 135, 206, 235. So 135, 206. All right. If you mess up the number, it'll just pick whatever color combination, because remember this, as long as it's a number between 1 and 255, or I'm sorry, 0 and 255, it'll have a shade of color and it'll combine it. As long as it's between those two numbers, then it should be fine. So study not verified. It's because I'm missing a parentheses up here. Okay, let me verify again. There we go. Now, if I go back to my code, you can see that those funky colors added based on the RGB function. Okay, perfect. Let's see, what else? Let me go back here to my PowerPoint. Gradient colors is something really fun. Gradient color chooses a color, a shade of color based on the value that you have on that indicator, especially if you have a low number and a max number, like a minimum and a maximum. It'll just create a shade of the color between two colors that you select. If it's red and yellow, for example, somewhere in between you'll have orange, because red and yellow mix to make orange, right? If you have white and black, then it'll be gray in the middle. Pretty cool to use. Let's go ahead and look at an example where we can use a gradient color. It's important that when you use a gradient color on an indicator, this indicator lends itself to get that gradient applied. A lot of times, if you do it on a moving average, for example, it's pretty tough. You'll have to have an additional calculation for which to use that gradient color, because it's just averaging the prices. But let me show you something that uses gradient color. Let me remove this indicator. Let's go ahead and add a study. Okay, let's see. Studies. There we go. If I add an RSI, so the RSI, of course, ranges from 0 all the way to 100. 0 being oversold, 100 being overbought. Very rarely, though, we see a value reaching 0. You can get values under 30, under 20, but I don't see RSI ever reaching a 0 kind of thing. The same goes for the 100. It goes above 70, then you get 80s, even 90s, but pretty tough to get something that extreme. But as you can see right here, there's no gradient color applied. It's just gray numbers, and you have to look at the number and try to position it itself within that range of 0 to 100 to know exactly where it is. So let's go ahead and change this. I'm going to go and right click and go to Studies, Edit EasyLanguage for RSI. Okay, I'm not going to clean this indicator up. I'm just going to go to the section where I can change the colors. We got some coloring based on the criteria, but I want to base the color also on the gradient. I want to apply the gradient to plot number 1, which is RSI value. I can do that directly in this code and then mask it if I don't need it. So let me go ahead and do value 1, because you need a variable where to hold this gradient. And this is color gradient. I don't know why the other way. Gradient color. As soon as you type gradient color, it comes up in blue. So gradient color, gradient color has different parameters that you have to choose. Let me go ahead and go to the definition of the gradient color. And this is another way that you can find out, okay, what does gradient color need for it to work? And you can see that there's an example here. Gradient color, you need the value that you're going to set the color to. You need the minimum, the maximum, then you need the 2 colors. Here's is using white and blue, but you can choose the colors you want. So let's go back here and say for the gradient color, we want to apply this to the RSI value, and I'm just grabbing the name exactly as it appears right here inside the plot statement. I'm going to do, similar to what we saw earlier in the example, 20 as a low value and 80 as a high value. And then we're going to do the low value is going to be blue and the high value is going to be red. We close parentheses and then close this with a semicolon. Once you define what the color gradient is going to be, then we apply it to plot number 1. So let me go ahead and first of all, I'm going to leave that color criteria there. But what we do, let me verify this. As soon as we verify, let's go back here to our code. We need a way to make that happen. This is changing the color, gradient color, RSI. So we need to set plot color. Actually, this is the BG color. Set plot BG color of plot number 1. We're going to set it to value 1. Let's verify this. That's the way. So we create the color gradient, store it in value 1, and then we apply it to the background. So now if I go back to my TradeStation, you can see the gradient applied to the values. That's pretty cool, right? Because now it adopts a shade of the color in between minimum and maximum. So you can see that this 2596 gets highlighted in a bright blue. And then you have this other one that's closer to 80, which is the bright red. Now, of course, if you sort this, then you have the actual gradient effect from blue to red. That, of course, helps you if you have a minimum and a maximum. Another way that you can do this is looking at historical values. So that's a little bit different. I believe that, let me show you norm gradient color is a function that you can use. And it doesn't really use a minimum and a maximum. You have the ability to just let it look at historical data, how the values fluctuate, and determine what the highest and the lowest values are from that historical period. And that way you don't have to be concerned about 20 and the 80s, because what happens is that when you go to an indicator that maybe the market's moving very quickly and a lot of these symbols start getting overbought, you're going to see a lot of blue. There's very little differentiation between them. So that's what happens when you have a minimum or a set minimum and a set maximum, that it doesn't adapt to market conditions. And the way to fix that is to use something that looks at historical data, looks at the highest and the lowest values, and set those for your gradient color. So we can do this. Let me right click on the norm gradient and go to definition so I can look at the parameters. First of all, you need the value or the parameter to which you're going to apply the color. So that's going to be plot number 1, or in this case, RSI value. You need to tell it whether the values cross 0 or not. And this is a true-false statement. If it crosses over 0, meaning that there's a 0 line going in the middle, then you set it to true. If it goes, in our case, since it's RSI, It goes from 0 to 100. It doesn't cross 0, so we're going to set it to false. And then this is the number of bars to consider for the high and the low. This is the look back. How many bars back is it looking? And then you use the up color and the down color. So let's go ahead and try that. So we still maintain the RSI value. This one is false because it doesn't cross over 0. And I'm looking at, let's look at 50 historical bars, okay? So we need in this case, is the maximum first, or the highest is first, and then the lowest is next. So in the highest, I'm going to make it red, and the lowest, I'm going to make it blue. Let's verify that. And then let me look at my TradeStation, and there we go. Now, look at the difference in the colors. Now we get brighter reds and brighter blues. Why? Because it looks at all the values, and then it sets those maximum and minimums automatically for you. If we had just a small section of symbol, let me remove the top 20, for example. Notice how it automatically adjusts the gradient color, and then it goes from minimum to maximum. I can still continue deleting symbols here. Let me delete these that are oversold, and it'll continue to adjust. Let's see. There we go. It just looks at the historical values from within itself, and it tries to adapt accordingly. So those are pretty cool ways in which you can create enhanced visuals, not only in charting, but in RadarScreen, making sure that your indicators are switching colors, are switching thickness, and it just provides you a better and stronger, not stronger signal, because the signals are still strong, but these are signals that are more visual. They just enhance the visual for you automatically. And that's about it. I think that's the end of this. Yes, it is. Hopefully you walk away with something to use in your custom indicators. The class is being recorded, so you can always watch it at your leisure and make sure that you pause it and practice all the concepts. Again, please check the masterclass link that I shared earlier. I want everybody to take an opportunity to see if there's an event, or if this event is something that you'd like to attend. Let me just put it here again. There we go. So the link to the masterclass and the promo code that gives you a $100 discount. For today, I just want to say thank you for your time. Have a wonderful afternoon. And also, I look forward to seeing you in one of my future classes. See you later. Bye-bye.